Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Morgan. This is my channel Pisces Paperbacks, and today I'm going to be giving you some good wintry recommendations to read in December and January and February during the dark months. Small disclaimer is that I did have some trouble with this. I realized that I don't really read that many books that are tied to a season, and if I do, it tends to be spring or summer, I guess. And also I just don't think of books seasonally, so this was a little bit more difficult. I know I did a spooky Halloween-y time recommendations video, but I feel like I'm better able to recommend books based on mood than seasonal appropriateness. Anyway, I have 6 books that I want to talk about, and let's get started. Actually, before we dive into the real recommendations, I'd like to issue a retraction. In my October recommendation video, I mentioned The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, and that was a mistake. This is literally a winter book. It takes place in December, dead of winter New York with wind and snow. I think there's even a Christmas party. This is a winter book, 100%, and attributing it to the fall season was just absolutely egregious on my part, and I apologize. Okay, so the real first recommendation on my winter books list is Dark Lover by J.R. Ward, and generally just the Black Daggerhood Brotherhood series. This is a paranormal romance series about vampires. They're vampire warriors, and they are quite steamy. It's a lot of very possessive alpha male bullshit, so if that's not your jam, then I don't recommend these. But if that is your jam and you're even mildly interested in this series, I would highly recommend starting it in the winter. I started reading these in November or December of last year, and I just really feel while there's not really I don't think these have any specific seasons that they're set in, they just kind of have that dark, cold feeling and atmosphere to them. They're very gritty, and I am obsessed with them. I think I've read the first five or 6, so I need to get on that because there's 30 books in the series. There's probably more 22, but there's a lot in this one. This first book in the series is about Wrath, who's the king of the vampires, and when a close friend of his asks him to supervise the transformation of the friend's daughter from human to vampire, Wrath reluctantly agrees, and then they're just drawn to each other. It's very fated mates, another thing that I'm obsessed with, but isn't for everybody, and that's okay. In a very different vein, I would like to recommend Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. So I mentioned this in my audiobooks recommendation video in October, so it's a bit recent that I brought it up, but I still think it's appropriate. I think a lot of people would agree that for some reason fantasy feels like a very good winter read. I'm not really sure why, but I definitely think this applies. Nevermore starts off following Morgan Crow, an 11-year-old girl who believes that she is cursed to just give everybody around her terrible, awful bad luck. And one day, a man named Jupiter sweeps into her home and takes her away to the city of Nevermore, where she has entered to try and get into this magical school. And it's about found family and learning about your own powers and finding friends, and it's just so wonderful, and the city is so whimsical. There are 3 books out. I've only read the first 2, and each of the 2 books that I've read follows a full calendar year in Morgan's life. So there is I remember a Christmas scene and lots of winter things happening in here, and it's just delightful. Again, with the high fantasy, I want to mention Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This follows Simon Snow, the worst chosen one to ever be chosen, and his reluctant truce with his roommate, who he hates and believes is a vampire trying to kill him. And it is a parody of Harry Potter, and that is definitely evident. You can tell, and if that bothers you, this might not be the book for you, but I absolutely adore this book. The best scene in the entire book takes place in the forest in the dead of winter, surrounded by snow, and I love it so much. I think I read it in a day, and it's huge, so that definitely tells you something. I guess I'll get the last fantasy adjacent book out of the way, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. So this isn't really a fantasy, it's more a horror contemporary with some weird fantastical surrealist elements, and I am just obsessed with it. I'm not sure, I think it does take place in the winter, but it really gives very blustery New England winter vibes, and I was very much into it. It follows Sam, as she is in her, I think, Masters for Creative Writing anyway, but there's this group of girls in her program and they call themselves bunnies, and they're just like weirdly perfect and feminine, and Sam just kind of gets sucked into their orbit when they invite her to one of their smut salons, and it just devolves. It is a bit gory, a bit graphic, and just wild. I was obsessed when I was reading this. It's also pretty short, so if you have like a free day, you can totally just blow through this one. The next book I want to talk about is one that I read very recently, but I think it really works for winter, and that is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Iain Reid. This is a horror novel following a girl and her boyfriend as they are driving to go have dinner at her boyfriend's family's house for the first time, and it just is like, I guess, psychological horror. I'm not really sure, but it is disorienting and disturbing, and the entire thing takes place in one winter night when they're just driving down this extremely snowy road, and something about the snow and the ice and the winter just adds to the claustrophobia of this story in a way that is so compelling. This book is also extremely short. I read it in one sitting very easily, so if you have like a free night and it's like really dark and the snow just fell a few days ago, so there's still a lot of it on the ground, this would be a great one to like give you that creep factor hardcore. And lastly, I'd like to recommend My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I don't believe this book takes place in the winter, but something about the tone and feeling of this book I think would really complement the winter aesthetic and energy. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it's how I feel. My Dark Vanessa is an extremely disturbing contemporary about a girl named Vanessa, and when she's 15, she enters into a sexual relationship with her English teacher. It follows the entire length of their relationship, interspersed with chapters following Vanessa as a 30-year-old woman as she's starting to come to terms with the fact that her relationship with this teacher was not the grand romance she always imagined it was, and this realization is kind of brought on by accusations against him from several other students. So it is very disturbing, not in a way that feels exploitative, I don't know if that's the right word. It really makes you think about what being a survivor means and the fact that there's really no one way to correctly experience or process trauma, and I just thought this book was fantastic and had a lot of really interesting and important things to say. And on that downer of a note, I'm gonna wrap this video up. These are just some books that I recommend you pick up in winter. I think that it's an environment and atmosphere that would add to the experience of reading these books, and I hope you enjoy them. Let me know if there's any of here that strike your fancy, and if you've read any of them, let me know if you agree with the whole winter assessment. I feel like that's a good call on my part, but I might be biased. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!